The single biggest source of your lack of self-confidence and your concern with the opinion of others is the beliefs you've just eliminated. In order to get rid of the last vestiges of this dual problem, however, you need to do something we call deconditioning. Being criticized and judged, not meeting the expectations of others, people putting their attention on you, and being rejected have all been conditioned to create anxiety in many people. Such people can have a problem asking for what they want, speaking up when others might disagree, and worrying about what others might think of them. It's not unusual to experience recurring negative feelings in our lives, such as fear, anger, guilt, anxiety, and sadness, every time specific events or circumstances occur. You might feel anxiety whenever you're criticized or judged, or when someone rejects you. Or you might feel anger whenever you're asked to do something. In many cases, the events that stimulate the feelings in you don't produce the same feelings in other people, and vice versa. Why does an event produce feelings in some people and not in others? Sometimes beliefs cause the feelings. Sometimes it's conditioning. You've probably heard of Pavlov's famous dog experiments. Pavlov presented the dog with food, and the dog naturally salivated. Then he rang a bell just prior to presenting the food. After numerous presentations of food after the bell, Pavlov rang the bell and no food was delivered. The dog, of course, salivated anyway, because he had associated the sound of the bell with the food. In other words, a stimulus, the bell, that wouldn't normally produce a hunger response did so because the dog associated the sound of it with the food. If the dog truly understood that it was the food that caused him to salivate and not the bell, which just happened to ring at the same time, would he still salivate when a bell was rung? Of course he wouldn't. Well, I'm going to help you avoid making the same mistake Pavlov's dog did. Namely, I'll show you how to make a distinction between what really caused your anxiety and unrelated events that just happened to occur at the same time. And after you make that distinction, the stimulus will be deconditioned. Let's start with conditioning number 1. Fear associated with being criticized or judged. Do you experience some level of anxiety when you're criticized or judged, or even think about being criticized or judged? Most people do, but not everyone. If you don't experience any anxiety at all when you're criticized or judged, please click the Next Conditioning button and go on to the next conditioning. If you do experience even a little anxiety, just let the program continue to play. If you do experience some anxiety when you're criticized or judged, I've got some good news for you. Being criticized or judged does not inherently cause anxiety. If it did, everyone who ever was criticized or judged would feel anxiety. And not everyone does. So you've been conditioned to feel anxiety when you're criticized or judged. Luckily, deconditioning is possible. In fact, you're going to do it right now. Imagine that if someone gave you an ice cream cone, he looked angry and drew his fist back as if to hit you. What would you probably feel? Fear, right? Now imagine another person did the same thing. And imagine the same event got repeated several more times with different people. What would you probably feel each time? Still fear, right? Now imagine that someone else came along, looking friendly, no fist, and offered you an ice cream cone. What do you think you would feel this time? Probably fear, even though there was no physical threat from this person. Ice cream cones would have been conditioned to make you feel fear, because you had felt fear every time you had been given an ice cream cone before. But can you get that the ice cream cone didn't cause the fear? It was the threatening fist that just happened to show up at the same time. You didn't distinguish between what really caused the fear, namely the fist, and the ice cream, which just happened to be there at the same time. If I helped you make this distinction, is it clear that being given an ice cream cone would never again produce fear? Now we're going to make the same distinction regarding being judged and criticized. If you're like most people, you probably first experienced anxiety associated with being criticized or judged when you were a child. and your parents got upset with you when you didn't do what they wanted you to do. That's how I felt when my parents got upset at me for my behavior as a child. In fact, I now realize that the anxiety was not caused by my parents' criticism and judgment. The anxiety was caused by the meaning I gave to my parents' anger or annoyance when they criticized or judged me. The same probably happened with you. Let me explain. When they got angry, how loved did you feel? Not very, I suspect. And because the people you depended on for your very survival seemed to be withdrawing their love, you equated that with possible abandonment. In your young mind, that meant no survival. In other words, anger meant no love meant abandonment, and abandonment meant dying. You didn't consciously think all this out any more than Pavlov's dog did, but that's how the subconscious conditioning took place. Can you see it was this perceived threat to your survival that caused the fear? It had nothing to do with being judged or criticized. And because you never distinguished between the real cause of the anxiety, a perceived threat to your survival, and merely being criticized or judged, which happened to coincide, being criticized or judged got conditioned to produce anxiety, just like the ice cream cone. But is it clear now? It wasn't criticism or judgment that caused your anxiety. It was the meaning you gave to the way your parents reacted when they criticized or judged you. Once you make this distinction, being criticized or judged will no longer cause you anxiety. I know that sounds too simple, too easy, but just stay with me. Let's see what happens. This process has worked tens of thousands of times. To understand even more clearly that being criticized or judged never caused your anxiety, imagine right now a childhood situation where you didn't do what your parents wanted you to do. And then imagine them criticizing, judging you in a supportive and loving manner. Take your time imagining this. Use the pause button below if you need more time. Just now, as you imagine Mom and Dad discussing your failure to do what they wanted from you in a loving, supportive way so that you didn't perceive a threat to your survival, did you just feel anxiety? I don't think so. And if you didn't experience anxiety in this childhood situation when you were criticized or judged, do you think you would today? Doesn't seem very likely, does it? Now, close your eyes, take a deep breath, and then let go. In your mind's eye, imagine a situation in the future that's never happened, in which you're being criticized or judged. Right now, as you imagine it, do you still feel any anxiety? Say your answer out loud. You don't, do you? Please open your eyes. Once you clearly make the distinction between being criticized or judged, which didn't cause anxiety, and the meaning you gave to the way Mom and Dad reacted when they criticized or judged you, which is what really caused the anxiety, being criticized or judged will no longer produce anxiety. Now, either click on the next conditioning button and go to the next conditioning, or exit this program. Then make a note to yourself when you plan to return and complete this program.